Hey, good people. This is Rocky with Rocky's Reality, the #1 podcast for unfiltered and unapologetic culture, entertainment, and relationships. Tap in live Thursdays, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as I chat with some of the dopest artists, celebrities, influencers, entrepreneurs, and more. Make sure to catch us live Thursdays, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Facebook, YouTube, and Roku. See you soon. All right. Welcome to Rocky's Reality and happy Juneteenth, everyone. Hopefully some of you all were, or most of you all were able to have this day off work today. If not, we are definitely going to celebrate in your honor. For those of you who are not aware, Juneteenth is now officially a official federal holiday. And fortunately, it was enacted before this current administration, but just a little history for you all. And it honors when the slaves in Galveston, Texas, they finally discovered that they were free. This was 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation that freed most of the other slaves in the South. Of course, there's a lot more to that story, but that's just a snapshot of why we should celebrate Juneteenth, why it is important. And we have to continue to celebrate our victories and keep working for them. And so tonight I am honored to have someone who's a champion of bringing to the forefront different issues that need to be celebrated, that continue, that need to be continued and highlighted, especially again with our current administration. So I am going to introduce to you all, and you all may have seen her on CNN or ABC. If you're on Instagram, you've probably also seen her on there as well. She's been on a number of outlets. Areva Martin is an award-winning civil rights attorney, TV and radio show host, legal commentator. Again, you've seen her on CNN, ABC. She is a leading voice that illuminates issues such as the legal issues. So you've seen her commenting on the Sean Diddy Combs trial, also any political, equity, and social injustice topics. She is a leading voice as well. She is also the host of the digital talk show, The Special Report with Areva Martin. You have also seen her on Truth Talks Live. She's had some very, I was looking at the conversation the other day with her and Dr. I believe Bryant and Toure about discipline. So we may touch on that, but she's also on Truth Talks Live. And she is the founder of Special Needs Network, which is a cause near and dear to her heart. So we're going to get into a plethora of topics today, but I just want to welcome to the stage Areva Martin. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much, Rocky, for having
me. You're welcome. Absolutely. And again, I just am honored and want to give you your flowers for being one of those people who are at the forefront. And thank you for making sense of the madness a lot of times, because there's so much that we are inundated with every day. I really have to take a break sometimes because I just can't believe the foolishness that comes up on my timeline. Like I have to look at it and I'm like, and I have to double check and triple check sources to say, okay, is this actually for real? And some of it is actually for real. It's actually going on. So I thank you for being at the forefront because we have so many distractions, but I'm glad that we have days like Juneteenth where we can celebrate how far we come, how far we're going, the progress that is being made despite the attempts to set us back. So for you, first I want to start asking Areva, you are located in LA.
Yes.
Is that correct? Where you're kind of like ground zero for a lot of things that have happened, especially with the protests, or no, riots is what they try to deem them as. I want to ask you though, how are you mentally? How is it for you? Because it's a lot that you carry.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that you have to take a break sometimes, because I think that's how we're all feeling in this moment, just overwhelmed. It seems like once you kind of lock in on one story, something else pops up. So before you could even really react or have a visceral response to that one story, there's something else. This weekend is a good example. Last weekend was a good example of that, when we saw the military birthday party that was happening in DC, and then we had the No Kings protest, 5 million people strong around the country. And then we learned that two Democratic senator and her husband were shot and killed in Minnesota. We know there was an attack by Israel on Iran. We have a curfew going on in Los Angeles over these ICE raids. So yeah, there's a whole lot coming at us seemingly all the time since Trump has resumed the presidency. But I do what you do. I take a break some days. Some days it's just mindless Netflix movies, not even good movies, just mindless binging TV to take a break from the news, because my job is the news. So I read a gazillion newspapers. I start early in the morning at 5 a.m. And by noon, definitely by 4 or 5 o'clock, some days my brain is exhausted with the news, most of it bad news recently. So you have to take those mental health breaks so that you're not just so absorbed that you forget some of the good things that are happening, like Juneteenth. We have an opportunity to have a national holiday, something that so many advocates worked for decades to have happen. So we don't want the bad to overshadow the good, because there still is a whole lot of good that we all, as Alex Haley taught us, to find the good and to praise it. So on Juneteenth today, that's what I'm doing.
I appreciate that, because I read that there were over 2,000 rallies. There were over 2,000 No Kings rallies. And I was asking, also researching, like, well, I just wondered, like, how many states actually had rallies? And what I saw was like, it was a rally in each of the 50. It was one or more rallies in each of the 50 states.
No,
that has to speak volumes. I actually drove past one this weekend myself while my husband and I were out, and we saw the No King signs, and I was just like, and we were in a downriver community. I'm here in Michigan, Metro Detroit area. So I think it just speaks volumes, the level of resistance that this presidency is receiving.
No, you're right. Every state, from large cities like Philadelphia, Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, to tiny cities that you wouldn't even expect to have their own protest movements. I got photos from friends saying we're a small group, but we are a mighty group. And some of the signs, Rocky, I have to tell you, people are so creative. Some of those signs have me cracking up. One of the ones I love says, if Kamala had been elected president, we
would be at brunch. Yeah, we'd be at brunch now. I saw that one. Yes.
That was one of the best signs. And it went on from there. I mean, just really amazing.
Yes.
One said, Trump says he's getting all the criminals out, still waiting for him to leave.
Right. Right. It's another one I saw said, Taco go to hell. Taco go to hell. It's just.
Yeah. It was people use their creativity to voice their opinions, to exercise their First Amendment rights. And contrary to the way some of these rallies have been characterized in the media, what we do know is that mostly peaceful protests. And when they weren't so-called peaceful, that's what happens when you try to marginalize people. That's what happened when you try to other people. When you trample on their rights, people have a response. And, for people who are fed up with folks taking to the streets, they should be equally fed up with people's rights being trampled on, with people being treated inhumanely, with people having to fight for their basic humanity in this country. So I wish we'd see the same kind of, righteous indignation that people have had over the weekend about the protests over the lawmakers that refuse to give us common sense immigration reform.
It is.
Yeah, so
it's just abhorrent. It's terrible. And an Instagram friend of mine said, this is just so dumb. All of these Trump complaints are just so dumb. And I said, how could you see this as dumb? I said, so are you a Trump supporter? She said, well, I'm not a Democrat. And I said, oh, okay. This has.
Why did you think they were dumb?
I didn't even go into it too more, because my thing is for me, it's no logical discourse that can happen at this point with certain people. We're about 6 months in. How can you still have any modicum of respect for him? And I can't even. I have literally ended some relationships, Areva. I really have, because my thing is, it is not just a difference of politics. It is about human decency.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to affect your parents. It's going to affect from children to elders. And So I want to ask though, because especially speaking of the, and thank God you have networks like the Special Needs Network, because it's also going to affect uh, children with special needs and disabilities. Already, they've cut programs here in the state of Michigan. Already, friends and a friend of mine, her son receives special programs, and she lives in Arizona. She said already she's been told that she and her husband will now have to incur thousands of dollars in cost to cover the services they were had gotten for their son. So I'm just appalled at it. But I just want to ask you, with so much we're inundated with, because now we're moving on. The G7 summit is coming, so that's going to be a whole new circus of things. What should we be paying attention to? Because last week it was he and Elon Musk had fallen out. That was the big thing. Then Elon says, "Oh, I made a mistake," and now this is, for me, that was just like the smoke and mirrors for it. I really didn't believe they were really. There probably is some dissension, but I think it's a lot of just manipulation as well. What should we really be paying attention to right now? And then we've got the Diddy trial still going on. It's so much. So what should we be paying attention to?
Well, on the political front, we need to be paying attention to those lawmakers who are going to stand up for our democracy, who are going to stand up for the the rights that we have under the Constitution, because we have some pretty important local elections that have been going on, and of course, in 26 we have the midterm elections. And some of the comments, some of the actions, some of the rhetoric coming out of the GOP, I think, gives us an ample opportunity to not only win back some key races in states across this country, but also to look at winning back the House. Trump, as we know, is widely unpopular. Despite your friends' comment and despite some of my friends' comments, the polls don't. The polls have been pretty consistent. That these policies, whether it's cuts to Medicaid, whether it is the inhumane way that children and parents are being kidnapped off the streets and being deported, when he told us, the American people, that he was going after convicted criminals who had overstayed their visas, or the time that they were allotted in the United States, only to see them going after workers on farms, workers in factories, grabbing kids off of school lots and grabbing parents out of communities. It's having an impact, and people are starting to see that what we already knew, that this man is a liar, that he's dangerous, that he can't be trusted, that he doesn't have the best interests of the American people at heart, and that this is all about retribution. The latest statement is he's going to increase ICE raids on Democratic cities. Now, I mean, the level of personal retribution involved in his governance is so blatant. But many people are just now getting to see it. And unfortunately, Rocky, a lot of people had the attitude, if it doesn't bother me, then I don't care. But now they see people being ripped out of their own communities, and they're starting to wake up to realize if it can happen to your neighbor, it can happen to you. So none of us have the luxury of the benefit of sitting back saying that's happening to somebody else, not us, because it's happening to all of us. When they snatch those workers off those farms, that means they're not workers available to harvest the crops that we need. So that means your grocery prices are going to be sky high already. Yeah. I was at the grocery store the other day. I wanted to buy a box of grapes. The grapes were $8. Why are grapes
ridiculous? Ridiculous. Why are
grapes $8? So,
and are they organic? They're not. Are they organic?
It didn't matter.
Exactly.
You afford $8 grapes. So those grapes could go to $10. They could go to $12. It's no telling where we're going to end up with these very, very reckless and senseless policies coming out of this White House.
It's definitely disheartening. So I want to shift a little bit because I don't want to waste the whole time talking about Trump. I definitely want to shift to giving you your flowers. I want to shift a little bit and talk about, because you've had some monumental times where like you helped some descendants in Palm Springs, St. Louis University. You have the special needs network. What led you to this line of work, Areva? What did you wake up as a kid and say, I want to be a civil rights attorney? Like, to just give me a snapshot of how you got here.
I definitely did not wake up saying that. I didn't even know any lawyers in my own neighborhood or my community. But what I did wake up noticing were the huge disparities. I understood early on in life that there were the haves and have-nots, and there were people who were downtrodden, forgotten about, who were stigmatized, who were basically written off in our society. And I happened to be one of those people. I lived in one of those neighborhoods. my upbringing, the relatives, the people I live with, my family, we were supposed to be a statistic, a Black poor family living in a housing project in North St. Louis, who, according to a lot of social scientists, would be stuck in cycles and cycles of poverty. And I had a chance to go to a high school in a different part of St. Louis and see a different side of that community and the two divides that existed in so many cities across this country. So I knew early on that I wanted to do something that would address those disparities, something that would allow me to challenge a lot of those systems that just predetermined, even before you were born, what your outcome, what your future, what your life would be like. And I just early on, I don't know, intuitively knew that where you started didn't have to be where you finished. So that's what led me to a career as a civil rights lawyer. It's what led me to being a civil rights activist and an advocate, whether it's for people with disabilities through Special Needs Network, whether it's for Black and Brown people through my civil rights litigation and work that I do as a lawyer, or my work I do on TV. I get an opportunity to talk about big legal cases that are in the news and help people understand them, and then talk about them through a lens of a Black woman, through a lens of someone who has lived in communities oftentimes where some of these cases take place, or where some of the people involved in these cases hail from. So I just knew I wanted to do something, and I've been so incredibly blessed with the opportunity to use my voice and to speak out on these issues using a variety of platforms.
I love it. Nothing like a Midwesterner. I'm sorry. We've got a certain I love that you're from St. Louis, Michigan, Missouri. We're Midwest. We have a certain grit in us that is undeniable. So but I want to ask you
just a quick anecdote of I have an intern working with me from Washington University. He's a young man from St. Louis. He's a rising senior at Washington University, and my California team, they're like, does he have to go back to college? Is there any way he can stay? I'm like, yes, that boy has to go back to college. But his work ethic, his just commitment,
impeccable.
It's just so incredible. He's only been here like 2 weeks, and everybody's like fighting over him. Can he work on my team? Can he work on my projects? So he's doing us proud.
I love to hear that, especially about a young Black man.
Yes.
I love to hear that. So I wanted to ask your input on the Tulsa reparations. I guess for me, there's not going to be any direct payout. There's $100 million will be raised to manage the Greenwood Trust. Economic developments will be happening in the Greenwood district. There are going to be some housing programs. But I felt like they should get a little money. Why is there no payout?
Yeah, first of all, let me just give a shout out to Demario Simmons. He's my brother, my partner in crime, phenomenal civil rights attorney that was involved with the original case filed back in the day by Professor Charles Ogletree and Johnny Cochran that went all the way to the Supreme Court. And unfortunately, that case was dismissed. And then Demario at the time was a law clerk working for those prestigious lawyers. And then come full circle, he's the lead attorney representing the survivors. I think he started with 3 or 4. He's down to 2 because the other 2, I think, have passed away. He fought a good fight, but he lost the lawsuit in the Tulsa Supreme Court because these cases are challenging, because they happened decades ago, and there are laws that really prevent these kinds of lawsuits from being successful in the courts. So we have to use a variety of ways to push this work forward. Some of the reparative justice, I should say, concepts out of Tulsa mirror what we did in Palm Springs. The investment in housing, first-time homeowners, the business investments, the economic investment. Those were some of the components of what we negotiated in Palm Springs. We were able, though, to get cash payments in Palm Springs, close to $6 million that will be distributed to the survivors. Demario and team were not able to get that in Tulsa. A lot of this, look, it's just political. The mayor of Tulsa, Black man, just elected in a city that is predominantly white. Tulsa is in a red state. So the politics make it very difficult. I'm sure you've seen even Wes Moore, very beloved governor of Maryland, not support the formation of a reparations committee in that state. and many believing that that was political because he may have aspirations for higher office, running for president in 2028. And reparations in many parts of our country is still a bad word. It's a very misunderstood concept, I'll tell you that. But a lot
That's
of people,
what I was wondering. Maybe I misunderstood the dynamics of reparations. That's why I want to ask you about Tulsa, because we know it was so horrific and it's proven. We know that it happened. And I know it was really a century ago at this point. So that's what I was wondering. Because when I read, I'm like, oh, they got the reparations. And then when I read and I saw no actual cash, but I guess how would you determine how much and which descendants? I know it's a lot
that's
of
not an excuse, Rocky. We can figure out how to pay people.
Okay, so I was just wondering.
I'm explaining the politics, but I'm not giving a pass to the politicians that will not vote for cash payments. Those, what you just said, are some of the excuses that people use. Oh, we can't put a price tag on it. Oh, it's going to be too difficult to administer it. Who determines who gets? Look, when COVID hit, we figured out how to get checks in the hands of everybody in this country. Not one check, but they got two checks. We figured out how to get PPP loans to businesses. We figured out how to get SBA loans. This country knows how to make reparations. We figured it out for the Japanese coming out of the internment camps. So in the early 90s, Rosewood, Florida. So we have examples of the payment of cash, but it is the politics of it. There are still people in this country who say Black folks don't deserve to be compensated, that say Black people don't know how to handle money. All they're going to do is run through it. All they're going to do is spend it up like the lottery money on, I don't know, cars, women, clothes, casinos, whatever. But none of that is an excuse. There is a case, a legitimate case to be made for why reparations should be paid. Definitely, as you said, Tulsa, there's no doubt about the harm that was done. There's no doubt about the fact that the harm was based on racial animus, racial animosity towards those Black people in that city. So the question of who did it, that has even been determined. So we know who did it, we know why they did it, and we know the consequences of their actions. Now it gets down to how do we compensate people? And when we get to talking about money and Black people, folks always retrench. They retreat. They come up with all these excuses. We're the only demographic that folks have this kind of attitude to when it comes to paying money. Look, Cornell Brooks, a brilliant lawyer, civil rights attorney, former president of the NAACP, professor now at the Harvard Kennedy School of Business, wrote a brilliant piece for the New York Times several months ago, laying out all the ways in which this country pays reparations on the regular to all kinds of people, big banks, farmers, the auto industry, the aircraft industry. So this sense that we don't pay reparations or haven't paid, that's a false statement. It's a fallacy. This country knows how to compensate groups when it chooses to do so. So it's a matter of political will. But when it comes to Black folks, we don't have that will. It's just that simple.
Well, I love we can celebrate and take our wins where we can get them. So I do commend your colleague and salute him for his work.
And let me say this, Rocky. I told someone this when I took the Palm Springs case. Someone told me don't take it. It was a dead loser. I said, look, I'm going to take the case. I may not get everything that they deserve in this moment, but Johnny Cochran, Charles Ogletree took the Tulsa, Oklahoma case 20 years ago. They lost. DeMario Simmons, 20 years later, takes it. We get the investment in the trust. So some generation of lawyers, the next 10 years or 20 years takes us further. So the fight for justice is a continuous fight. We don't give up when we don't get everything we want in one moment of time, in one moment of history. So we are laying the foundation for some future brilliant lawyers and advocates and activists to come along to build on that work we are doing.
Right. Pick up the baton.
Pick up the baton. That's what this is all about.
That's all we can do.
Every generation, every demographic, pick up that baton. Don't give up because you don't get it all. We have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, because that's how we got Juneteenth. I mean,
right. And speaking of, that was
they could have given up and said, "Oh, we're never going to get a Juneteenth holiday." But guess what? We got it because somebody had the perseverance, the steadfastness to keep pushing.
Yeah, and I'm glad they did before the current administration got in there, because that Yeah, so that's one great thing I could commend Biden's administration for. And that's what I was going to ask you. My next question, as a multi-award winning civil rights attorney, what does Juneteenth mean to you?
It symbolizes one, the history of America, the history of Black America that is now under attack. There is an effort, as we know, to erase. I had just read an article recently that said that AI is going to play a big role in rewriting U.S. history, and we can imagine that it will continue to erase us in the way that so many have been working diligently to erase us from that history. But Juneteenth gives us an opportunity to retell that history, to instill this history in students, maybe who go to schools where it's not even taught. To community leaders that maybe went to school at a time when it wasn't taught. I remember on my podcast, this was a couple of years ago, doing a story about Jim Crow. And I have a 92-year-old aunt who watches my shows religiously. And she has a friend in Michigan, because my aunt lived in Michigan for many, many years. And she said her friend was watching the show and said, I never learned, this friend is in her late 70s, never learned anything about Jim Crow, had never heard that term before. So we shouldn't assume that everybody has gotten the same level of education, same level of exposure.
A woman in her 70s?
In her late 70s, said she didn't.
But she was living during that time. So, wow.
Well, I'll tell you this, my aunt,
wow,
who worked at the 20 Grand. I don't know if you remember the 20 Grand in Detroit, but she was a waitress at the 20 Grand. She's 19.
I don't remember it, but I've heard of it. My elders have told me about it.
Yeah. Well, my aunt will be 93. So
yeah,
she worked there whenever it was. I heard about it through her. And she said, when I asked her about these civil rights issues, she says, look, Areva, you're thinking about Black folks today. She says, when I was coming up, we just were working. She says she worked in some white neighborhood. I don't know if it was Farmington,
maybe Farmington or Farmington Hills.
Or
Ferndale. Ferndale is another one.
She's on a bus, getting there 7 a.m, working 12 hours a day, begging this Jewish lady to let her off to go to a funeral, coming home after a 12-hour day, soaking her feet, getting back on that bus. So she's like, we weren't marching. And she said, unless we were, if you weren't educated or in college, you just weren't connected in a way that, they didn't have access to information the way we have access to information. And she had dropped out of school as a teenager. She was a young mother. So, I just love talking to her because she gives me that perspective. Now, today she's on TikTok, she's on Facebook, she's, totally immersed in the culture. But she says, as a 20-year-old woman who her mother sent her from West Virginia to Detroit to live with her aunt, to go to work to take care of her baby, she's like, she just had to keep her head down, working 6 days a week in a bar, making pennies to send home money to take care of her daughter. So,
wow.
So those stories are always interesting to me because, again, it's easy for us to think everybody knows everything that we know.
Yeah, that's true. Especially, just because they're older doesn't mean that either.
No,
yes, absolutely.
That's not.
So I've really appreciated chatting with you, Areva, and I hope we can stay in contact. And I, again, want to give you kudos on all that you're achieving. Couple last questions. When we met at the Career Master Brunch, I asked you what you would tell your younger self. And I remember you said something like, don't sweat the small stuff, keep going. It's going to work out. It will be okay. It will be okay. If you were able to go into the future, what would you tell your older self? Like, knowing what's going on now, what would you tell your older self?
I would tell my older self, I hope you had a lot of fun. I hope in the midst of all the hard work that you did, that you had some fun, that you got to enjoy your family, your friendships, because we do have so many more opportunities today than what, our ancestors, our relatives, our parents, our grandparents, great-grandparents had. And we should be taking advantage of it, working hard, building for the future, laying the foundation for the future, but also I believe that this life is meant to be enjoyed. Relationships are meant to be enjoyed. And so I would say to my older self, I hope you took some time to smell the roses, to enjoy some of the fruits of the labor of our
Absolutely.
ancestors who worked hard to give us these opportunities.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because you are here on an assignment, and have fun with, enjoy the journey. That's some of the best advice I've received. And as busy women, we're moms, we're wives, we're activists, we're therapists, we're friends, we're sisters, we're daughters, we're all these things. And I have to be intentional about enjoying the moment. So
Yes.
that's great advice. So I like to end with 5 favorites. And again, I appreciate you. Areva, tell people right quick where they can find you so they can get more great
Yeah,
commentary.
you can find me at my website is arevamartin.com, and that's AREVAMARTIN. And all things social, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, it's all at Areva Martin. You can learn more about the Special Needs Network if you are the parent or relative or caregiver or friend of someone with special needs. You can go to our website, snnla.org. We have tons of free resources, free webinars, and other information on that website to help anyone that may need information or resources to help someone with a disability or special needs.
Awesome. And I salute you. As someone who's a social worker by trade, I worked with at-risk and disadvantaged families. So, and my son was diagnosed with ADHD. So, definitely understand how the lack of resources and education a lot of times is what the gap is. So, I appreciate your efforts for that. So, I want to end with 5 favorites. Let's have a little fun. Okay. All right. Favorite food.
Ooh, it's really a snack, but it's trail mix.
Okay. Okay. All right. Favorite travel destination.
New York City.
Love it, love it. All right, favorite TV movie, or I love when you said even if the movie is stupid. Like at times, let's just like they used to call it the idiot box back in the day. Yes, sometimes you just want to be an idiot and just look at nothing. So, what are some of your guilty pleasures when you're watching TV?
My favorite movie is The Godfather, one and
Oh,
two. I watch them religiously. I watch them over. I've seen them a million different times, and I'm never bored by Godfather one and two.
classic, classic movies, classic. All right, favorite thing to do when you are relaxing and enjoying this life.
I read a lot. I love to work out. I like trying different exercise classes. I love to entertain. I love to throw a party. I love to dance. I love music. I love just bringing people together. I'm a people connector. I fancy myself kind of a junior event manager, kind of, so I love to give a cool dinner party and decorate the table with different table linens and dishes. So I love to entertain. I like to cook. I'm a really good cook. I don't cook as much as I would want to, but when I do cook, I'm a really good cook.
I love that. All right. And last one. What has been your favorite piece of advice that you've received throughout your career?
At one point in my career, I was thinking of leaving the legal profession and giving up my law firm. In fact, I was shadowing a former lawyer who had given up her law practice, and she had become an event planner. And since I kind of fancied myself a junior event planner, I was thinking maybe I'll do what she's doing. So I started going to some functions with her. And I was meeting with my mentor, who's a lawyer, and I was telling her, and she all but smacked me and said, "Are you crazy?" And she told me how often Black businesses don't survive from one generation to the next because we don't think long term. It's kind of generalization, not true of all Black families, but she was just saying as a rule, she had experienced a lot of Black families not thinking about generational wealth and building, generations. So she told me by no means was I going to be an event planner, that I better make that my hobby on the side and not to ever give up my law practice. So, and now here I have 2 daughters who graduated from law school. One is already working in the business and the other one will be doing so soon. So had I not taken that advice, there would be no law firm for them to work in. And I don't think either of them have an interest in joining me in my event planning imaginary business. So that was some of the best advice I'd ever given it, had been given. And so I often tell that to other Black family businesses.
Don't give up. And so, speaking of that, the law chicks, right quick, I have to ask about the law chicks. Is that a venture you have with your daughter?
Yes, so it's a social media. We started calling ourselves that, and we have a project that we're working on that we're going to be revealing shortly. But yes, both my daughters have an interest in civil rights law. Both of them are advocates. You know, they grew up in a family watching both my husband and I, be activists and advocates. So it's instilled in them. It's in their DNA. I have pictures of us at rallies going back to when they were younger. So yes, I am just grateful for that advice from my mentor, and they now have a place to work and a place that hopefully they can pass on to future generations.
Absolutely. It's all about legacy building. So I thank you, Areva Martin, for joining me. And this is not goodbye. This is see you later. Please feel free to reach out. And everyone, make sure you go follow Areva Martin, Areva Martin, on all social media. She has concise commentary because a lot of times we need to muddle through the madness. So if you need that, and you need to know from the legal standpoint, not just from people's opinions about things, you need to know from a legal, logical standpoint, please follow her. So thank you again, Areva, for joining me.
Thank you, and
And
happy
happy Juneteenth.
Juneteenth.
Happy
Yes, thank
Juneteenth.
you.
Right.
Enjoy the rest of your Juneteenth.
Thank you. I will.
All right.